I just have to give the biggest disclaimer. My laptop has crashed on me. My editing software is gone, so I'm editing off of a really busted software that isn't letting me do much. So today's video, it's going to have to be a podcast style video, and I apologize if it just isn't giving what it should be giving and isn't at the same quality as some of my other videos. Hello. How's it going, y'all? It's me again after a long break. I'm a little bit sick. I have seasonal allergies, so my voice sounds real gross. My sincere apologies, but I really wanted to get my opinion on this show out, and I could not wait and hold it off any longer. So today I'm going to be giving you guys my 2 cents on the show Ms. Marvel. I've had a couple people actually ask me what my thoughts were on the show back when it came out last year, but to be completely honest, I was so disappointed with the representation that I have seen of South Asian girls in a show like Never Have I Ever that was made to represent brown girls, that I just didn't want to take the chance with Ms. Marvel. I didn't want to watch it and then end up being disappointed. For whatever reason, I just didn't have high expectations, and I thought I would actually be really disappointed. So I wanted to avoid the pain of that, and I just didn't really bother with watching it. But because some people reached out to me and asked me to review the show, I was like, yeah, I should really watch it, because at the end of the day, this is the first ever superhero who's both a brown girl and a Muslim. So I think it's important that I give it at least a shot. And I want to say that I am very, very pleasantly surprised. I loved the show. I really enjoyed it. It was so good. Every single episode had me like smiling or really intrigued. And although it's not perfect, I think the show Ms. Marvel did such a wonderful job of telling the story of Kamala Khan and also representing a minority group such as the South Asian community and the Muslim community. So in this video, I'm going to kind of run down the things that I felt really worked in this show, that I think they did a great job of, and why I enjoyed the show. But I also touch on some things that I felt were weak or that could have been done differently. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the number one thing that I think Ms. Marvel, the show, did a really great job of is showing the nuances to a South Asian Muslim experience while also giving Kamala Khan an individual storyline. I love that the Muslim community is represented as a community. I really appreciated and found it very accurate how the community bands together, especially during prayer times, during Eid celebrations, and during weddings. That's a very important part of the Muslim community, especially in a city like Jersey, New York, Toronto, where there's a very huge Muslim community. We're very connected during very special days of the year and also during prayer time. I also loved every scene in the mosque because, of course, in our day and age, there is such a misunderstanding and negative connotation to Muslim people, how we are as people, how we are as a community, and nobody really understands us entirely. A lot of people wouldn't step foot in a mosque just because of the judgments and the stereotypes that are already put behind us. And so the representation here of Kamala and her family actually praying at the mosque, I thought was so wonderful, just because it showed how peaceful the religion really is. And it also just made it normal to see a group of people pray at the mosque. You know, we see shows all the time, have scenes that take place in the church of people praying at church. And I think it's important to normalize anybody going to any religious mosque, church, or temple. It was also wonderful that Muslim people in this show were not just represented as brown people, because another stereotype that people put on Muslims is that we're all Arab or we're all brown, but Muslims come in all shapes, all sizes, all races. We could be white, we could be brown, we could be East Asian, we could be anything. And I also loved how the Muslim values were incorporated in the show. First of all, with prayer, that's an important part of every Muslim person's life. So I love that that was there. But also her parents being worried about her going out and partying because they're worried that she'll be drinking or that she'll be dressing in an inappropriate way, because that is a part of our experience. Muslims are obviously not allowed to drink, and we have a very modest way of dressing, and I don't think that's something that's understood by the general public. Of course, every Muslim has their own journey, and we're not all perfect. We all make our mistakes anyways, but I love that the show, through the parents, showed what Muslim values are, because first generation immigrants, we learn about Islam and we learn about Islamic values from our parents who grew up in countries that were, for the most part, majority Muslims, and these values were just implemented in their everyday lives. Someone like Kamala Khan's parents who grew up in Pakistan being a dominant Muslim majority country, are obviously going to have these values and raise their kids with these values. And I think the show did a great job of representing these values without questioning them, without making them seem like outdated or not modernized enough. I thought the show did a really great job of researching the things that Muslim people say and being accurate with that. Of course, with the phrases that they use throughout the show that Muslim people use in their day-to-day lives, such as Astaghfirullah or Allahu Akbar. I also really appreciated, and I felt like the show gave Muslims an opportunity to reclaim the word Allahu Akbar, because as we all know, when people hear that word or they think of that word, they don't really think a good thing. So I really appreciated when we heard the whole community chant Allahu Akbar 3 times when Kamala's brother is wedded to his wife, because it goes to show that that word is just a natural part of our life. It's an important word to us, and it's a word that holds a lot of love. I also really loved the show's visuals. I thought the color palette of the show was really, really well done. It's very colorful, it's very neon, it's very bright, and I feel like that really played into Kamala's world in her head. She's a teenager, she's young, she's someone with a bold imagination. The cinematography really, really played into that. I also loved, my little favorite part of the show is when she's texting someone and the texts are incorporated somewhere into the actual set design. And one more thing I want to say is that this show popped off with their music selection and with the scoring. I think they did a wonderful job of picking out tracks that were culturally appropriate, but also weren't stereotypical and the type of thing that you would see in every single show that tries to imitate a South Asian background. In episode 5, there is a shot, the opening shot actually, of the Marvel logo coming onto the screen with this old classical Bollywood song in the background. I was so in awe and thought that was so beautiful. The child in me was so excited to see Marvel open up their logo to the song of an old classical Bollywood track. Like, that was just so phenomenal. Another part of the show that I thought they did a really amazing job of is giving South Asian parents a full story and not just a one-sided perspective on the relationship between a child and their parent, specifically in South Asian households. And I'm not speaking for everybody. There are some people who have physically or verbally or emotionally abusive parents, but I'm saying that I've seen one common depiction of our parents, and I really appreciate that this story allowed the parents to have a story as well. Let's talk about partition. I really was not expecting this show to be so historically accurate and really get into the traumas of South Asian people, but I was absolutely mind blown when they took Kamala back to 1947 when partition happened. A lot of South Asian kids, we don't know exactly what partition is. We don't actually understand how partition affected our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and how that led us to where we are today. I myself didn't know much about partition until a couple weeks ago when I actually wrote a paper about it, but I was really, really unaware of how partition really changed the lives of South Asian people. Really, really quick history lesson for anyone who doesn't know. Partition is basically when British divided up India into 3 countries, or actually technically 2. They drew lines across India to create Pakistan, East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, and then India. And these borders were created on the assumption that Pakistan was a Muslim majority, India was a Hindu majority, and East Pakistan was also a Muslim majority. But these borders were super inaccurate because Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, we all lived very peacefully amongst each other, and our communities were drawn all across the vast land of India. And so the borders basically cut right through villages, cut right through people's homes and livelihoods, and decided that one side was for Muslims and one side was for Hindus. And then it caused a mass migration where people who were Muslim living in India were trying to escape to Pakistan or Bangladesh, and people who were Hindu living in Pakistan or Bangladesh were trying to cross the border over to India. And it caused a lot of riots. It caused an outburst of violence, and people were getting on these trains. So these trains represent represent a huge part of our history and a painful part of our history. Because this is the first ever show about Kamala Khan, we haven't had a movie prior or anything. We have actually never seen Kamala Khan in any Marvel movie before. It's important that we get to know her origin story. It's important, I feel, to get to understand how Kamala Khan became Miss Marvel. It's so relatable, and it connects to the targeted demographic, which is South Asian people, when we go as far back as partition. And Kamala is able to explore how her great-great-grandmother basically lost contact with her family, and how she got the magical bangle that gave her the powers that she had, and how that ended up in Kamala's hands. And I also love that Kamala was able to basically save her family, going back in time and connecting those two generations and helping her grandmother as a child find her father in the crowd where she was lost on the train tracks during partition. That really stood out to me is when Kamala comes home and her mother and her grandmother all hug each other because they have finally come to an understanding of who they are. Kamala's mom finally realizes that Kamala isn't a troubled kid who's just doing bad things. She's actually got these superpowers, which she's learning how to control and what to do about them. And that's why all the chaos around her has unfolded. And then she finally understands that her mom, Sana, was never just going on about fantasies and stories that were not real, but that she was trying to communicate that there's something special about their family. And once the three of them have that understanding, they hug it out. To me, a visual that represents healing generational trauma. And I think that's something that a lot of South Asian families we need to do, but we don't know how to. And I just loved seeing it on the screen. 3 generations come together and heal from something that happened what seems like so long ago, but still affects us to this day. And now I'm going to get to the parts of the show that I thought were a little bit weak or wasn't really working for me. I do want to say that as much as all the cultural representation and the incorporation of her Pakistani identity and her Muslim identity was done really well without overdoing it, I think the overall storyline was pretty weak. I say that because her main antagonist is the Clendensteins, and she's trying to defeat them and make sure that they don't let their world open up into her world and essentially destroy the human world as we know it. And she's fighting these people. She goes all the way to Pakistan where they follow her there and still want to basically kill Kamala to take her bangle from her so that they can accomplish that goal. The problem is resolved way too simply, in my opinion. All it took was being able to kill off some of the Clendensteins, and then Najma, who was the main antagonist, who was the master of all of this violence towards Kamala, basically looks at Kamala, who tells her, do the right thing. This is not right. This is not okay. And then Najma just says, you're right. And then stops all of her violence and basically walks into the light and dies. And I was like, I just feel like there was no reason, really, no moment of awakening for Najma to have this big change of mind, to be able to just decide on the spot that she's done fighting Kamala, even though she was fighting her for this long to get this bangle back. And then we moved on to the next issue. And the next antagonist in the show are the cops. And I just feel like the storyline of cops versus a minority group is just not what I expected for Miss Marvel necessarily. I completely understand it because cops are really, oppressive towards minority groups, especially Muslim people know exactly what that's like. But I wasn't really ready to see a girl with superpowers fight a police department, like I don't think I've ever seen a superhero movie necessarily where they're fighting the police, because when you have these superpowers, you're bigger than the rest of us who don't have superpowers. So why is your antagonist us everyday people who don't have these wonderful superpowers that you do? She's essentially trying to get Kamran to safety so that the damage control people don't arrest him and lock him away. But I just didn't find it as interesting as I did find, trying to defeat the Clendensteins. And in the end of the show, Kamala basically knocks out the damage control crew. And even then we see that they never really were her antagonist, because the head of the police department or the head of the damage control department was actually telling
the cop who really did want to go on with the operation of catching the two kids, aka Kamala and Kamran, who have these superpowers, he tells her that he never wanted her to do this. He never wanted her to go out there and try and find them and arrest them. He told her, stop this operation, don't do it. She does it anyways. And then the show ends with him being like, you're fired because I told you to never do it. And it just goes to show that the head of the damage control department was never even really about trying to arrest these two kids. It was just this one particular cop who orchestrated this whole arrest. I just didn't think it landed. I just didn't think it was interesting. I didn't think it did much. It's like, so we fought this girl when the whole time she was just going against orders and she was going to get fired anyways. I just feel like they really should have built on who is really trying to go after her, what their intention is, why they want to go after her, and then have this whole plot where Kamala basically overcomes them. And I think that would have been best done with the Clendenstein storyline, but they wrapped that one up real quick. And the one with the cops, I just didn't think was fitting at all for the type of person that Kamala Khan is, a superhero. But I do think the story was a little weak in that sense. Still very enjoyable if you're able to, ignore that. A small thing that kind of threw me off is Nakia, the hijabi character. Because she's a hijabi, she has her hijab on when she's in public, but every scene that we get to see her in private, her hijab just comes off. And even though the actress who plays Nakia isn't actually a hijabi, I just felt like that was something they should have never done. Because for women who wear the hijab, they wear the hijab so that nobody ever sees them with their hair out, except for like family members and whatnot. The actress who plays Nakia isn't actually a hijabi. I just felt like that was something they should have never done. Because for women who wear the hijab, they wear the hijab so that nobody ever sees them with their hair out, except for like family members and whatnot. And so because Nakia is representing that group of people, for her hijab to just come off, I still felt like was so jarring. When she was in the mosque, doing her wudu to go and pray and her hijab was off for a second, I was so taken aback. I was like, where is the girl's hijab? Because everybody can see her with no hijab. If you're going to have this hijabi character, then you should respect the fact that people who wear hijabs wear a hijab so that nobody sees them with their hair out. You can't have a character play a character who wears a hijab and then have scenes where they're not wearing the hijab. To me, that just doesn't make any sense, and it's disrespectful to women who do wear the hijab because it's completely opposite of the point of wearing a hijab.
Anyways, y'all, those are all my thoughts on this show. Honestly, editing on this software is killing me, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I said and what your thoughts on the show are. And if you have not subscribed already, what are you doing? Get to it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.